Today's podcast is presented by Podgo. Podgo is the easiest way for you to monetize your podcast, providing podcasters with a flat rate for ad space so you always know how much you get when you include an ad for Podgo. Apply today to become a member and immediately be connected with advertisers that fit your audience. That's podgo.co at podgo.co. And be sure to add our podcast in the How Did You Hear About Podgo section of the application.
Welcome to another episode of the So-Called Oreos podcast, the podcast where we discuss all the awkwardness, hardship, and hilarity that comes along with society labeling you white on the inside and black on the outside, also known as an Oreo. I'm Rachel Fowler here with my co-host,
Kia Swinton,
Amari Pollard,
Janae Price.
Hey, it's lit.
God, that was
so. How was everyone doing? How was everyone's week? Anything new?
I just want to shout out the So-Called Oreos and the listeners. Man, I'm so happy. We've been blowing up on Instagram. Amari's Paramore reel is almost at 1 million plays.
That's actually insane.
Holy shit.
Who knew that many people would care to see me acting a fool?
That is insane. And it still gets likes, like literally every second. Every time I look, it's like, this one, like you're real, like you're real, like you're real, like you're real. It's like,
I'm just waiting for Haley Williams to send me some free Paramore gear.
I know. I need to tag her in the tweets because I've tweeted about it too.
Oh, yeah. You need to tag her. I want to talk to her.
I tagged her in the original.
Wait, I don't think she has a Twitter. I tagged Paramore last time. I couldn't find her on Twitter.
I also saw someone tag her in the comments
they
on
did.
Instagram.
They want her to see too.
Maybe I'll slide into her DMs.
You should.
Like, hey, girl, watch this.
We just want to share the love.
I think she would like it. I mean, almost 1 million people liked it, so I mean, that's amazing. Oh, I'm so excited for it.
Yeah.
It's just like cool to see. I've been really enjoying the comments and just the fandom happening there, and particularly obviously with Black people, because growing up, I was like, I feel so alone in my love for Paramore. And so it's cool to see all that, and then to see that transfer to the So-Called Oreos page and the conversations that are starting there, just like even the DMs. Like I had a really good conversation with someone the other day about colorism and TV shows, and she was talking to me about how the first time she ever felt represented was when she read about Storm, like in the comics, but then she was really upset because all of the film representation has been of light-skinned mixed girls, and Storm is actually dark-skinned. So it's just been cool to have those kind of conversations. I love the community that's growing. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's so exciting. We're almost at 4,000 followers, and I'm still predicting. Actually, I think I'm beating my predictions that we'll get 10K before the end of the year.
Hey.
I actually think we're going to get it in like October, November, but we'll see.
Y'all, Kia's still on her manifesting shit.
Mm-hmm.
It's working though. It is working.
Something that I've been loving on social media is seeing that, like, you know, obviously we post content about race, and obviously that makes white people upset. And something that I've been loving is seeing like just tons of Black women cape for us that like we don't even know these people, and they are fighting people in the comments. And it's just been so like, wow. That makes me happy.
Black women stay protecting Black women.
Black women stay protecting. It's like, choo, choo, like on some Wonder Woman shit, you know?
And the emotional labor they will put themselves through to protect you is crazy. Like people just like having to educate people in the comments. And I'm like, we shouldn't have to be doing all of this extra stuff, especially without payment. But it's been awesome to see that.
100%.
Yeah. I just want to shout out you guys, first of all, the Oreos for doing awesome work, and the new listeners and old listeners, like our OGs who've like supported us. And it's nice to see that it's kind of like paying off. I mean, it's sad that it had to be through Instagram Reels, but whatever. I'm happy people are finding the page and finding the podcast, and I'm happy like we're having conversations because that's really what the podcast is about. So I'm just praying that we keep growing and more people can like just be added to our community, and we can bring you guys some like awesome content, awesome stuff. And like, I'm really excited for us.
Something I wanted to check in about has been my pitiful dating life. And I think like a little while ago, I said that I would be like giving you guys updates and stuff. That was probably in the beginning of COVID or whatever. I have since downloaded Hinge and re-downloaded Hinge, back on the apps now, girls. And it is still just as trash as ever. I went on a COVID-friendly date. You know what? I won't lie. I went on a partially safe COVID-free date, or a partially COVID-safe date. I'm fumbling the words, but you guys get what I mean. And it was trash. It was terrible. The guy, he basically used the excuse of being an introvert the entire time, but like I had to carry the conversation. And it's like, even my fellow introverts out there can say that, like, if you're in a situation with meeting new people, you'll at least try. And he really didn't try that much at all. And he just, it was just a bad date. It was just a bad date. And ever since, it's made me kind of like, do I actually want to date someone right now? I was even texting girls last night, because like I started talking to this guy who was really, I knew I wasn't attracted to him up front, but he had a funny response to my prompt, and I felt like that deserved us to match. And of course he started messaging me. And then once he started messaging me, I was like, oh crap. But next thing I know, we're having a dope conversation, and I'm like, well, here we are. And he like even let me talk about BTS and even like watch some of their videos. I was like, wow, he deserves a conversation. But then next thing I know, he's like asking me to go out on a date. And I'm like,
that's what tends to happen after you have a good conversation.
I know. And I ended up texting the Oreo group chat, like, guys, what do I do? Like, how do I tell him I'm not interested? And I took the punk way out and was basically like, oh, I'm getting a little serious with someone else. And, you know, I don't think this would be respectful to them, but you're really cool.
What did he say?
He was just like, I respect it. Like, good luck with everything.
Oh, no, he's a nice person too.
He's a nice person. And that's the thing that frustrates me. I feel so often with these dating apps is that the guys that are nice people are the guys that I'm usually not that attracted to. It's like the guys that are nice people are usually just not really my type, but I find myself matching with them anyway because we have dope ass conversation and I feel comfortable because I'm not attracted to you. And like,
we had this conversation before, and we talked about doing an episode about it, how like just because you're being nice doesn't mean like you're compatible. And I think a lot of times guys have this mentality where it's like, I'm nice, you should like me, but it's like, just because you're nice doesn't mean we have a lot in common. Doesn't mean like we have the same love language, we communicate the same way. Like, there's a lot of factors than just being nice. And I think a lot of these like incel type of guys are like, they just want fuckboys. And it's like, no, it's not. Like, some people happen to be fuckboys, but it's like, if you just are more compatible with someone, then you just are. Like, you can't force this just because they're nice. And in society will make you feel bad for like putting down a nice person. It's like, you know, at the end of the day, we're supposed to be nice. Like, you don't get a reward for being nice. I'm fucking nice all the time. And like,
Kia says so.
I'm just saying, like, I know some people are like, no, she's not. Whatever. I'm nice enough for me. But I'm not like out here being a dick and like playing guys left and right, you know? Like, that doesn't mean I like am walking around being like, I deserve like someone with Bill Gates money and all this stuff. Like, it's just, you're supposed to be a nice person at the end of the day. You don't deserve like 8 girlfriends because you're nice.
I think sometimes people, oh, sorry.
No, Amari, you go.
I was just going to say, sometimes I think people also hide under the guise of being nice. Like, they put on this nice guy persona. And I feel like it's after the fact that you realize that some of these nice guys are not actually as nice as they say they are, or they pretend to be. But I also think COVID is a great excuse. I feel like people have a really bad tendency of telling Black women in particular that we're picky, which I think is unfair. But I think COVID is a great way to also like lean into being more selective. Like, you should be more selective now during this time, just when you even think about the health risks that you're taking to potentially like see someone. If I don't think, like, I feel like also women have this feeling like, an obligation to, like, I feel like it would be so easy to feel obligated to go on a date with that guy because he's nice. And you had a good conversation when in reality, you don't owe anyone any like a date.
And on that tip, I think I've been really trying to be selective. And another reason why I didn't want to go on this date with this guy, one, is because I wanted to at least, well, I'm not attracted to him, but I'm kind of mentally like, I need to wait 2 weeks because I went on a date with someone else. So I need to just stay my ass inside, mask it up when I need to go grocery shopping and like walking down the street. And other than that, just like, sit my ass down for a little while. And then another thing with me, what both Kia and Amari just said about dating is just so absolutely valid. And I think with me, I'm trying to figure out if I have a tendency to go for the fuck boy instead of the nice guy. And if that is sometimes what turns me off. Through therapy, I've been working through this idea of how I think I kind of have a tendency to want to conquer things. And if I don't conquer things, then I don't necessarily feel fulfilled. And I think I might have the tendency to, around these fuckboys, kind of be like, I can conquer this. I can make you my own. And because of that, I have a tendency to just go after men who are not, their wants are not aligned with my wants. And they're not willing to cater to my needs. And then a nice guy comes around who may possibly be giving me all that. And I'm kind of like, his toenails are shaped weird. So I am. I mean, come on now. Is it? I think it is.
I think so. You can't have nasty feet in my bed. Come on now.
Come on now. But anyway, there's definitely the nice guys out there who aren't really, they're nice until they're nice. That's true.
They're nice until you don't sleep with them.
They're nice until you don't sleep with them. And I think also there are girls like that out there, like me, who have a tendency to wanna, I don't know, change a nigga.
Yeah, that's very dangerous.
Very dangerous. And I'm trying to grow. I'm trying to get past it. So.
Because you can't change people.
You can't. They have
to change on their own.
I feel like as Black women, we were just talking about our supporters and how they're Black women and how they're like willing to go to bat for us and they don't even know us. And I just feel like that's Black women in general. We've really taken this role of being caretakers in society, not only for our own, but for everyone. And I think that kind of comes with the turf of seeing a man with potential and only dreaming about his potential and not looking at everything he's showing you, So that's it with Janae's Dating Corner.
Hey, I think people have been asking about dating life, so I think they'll be happy that you shared some stuff. It's always a journey.
It is.
It's going to be a journey. That's okay.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to This Week in Black History with Kia.
Okay, friends, this week in Black history on September 20th, 1830, was the first National Convention of Black Freemen, and it was a 3-day conference presided over by Frederick Douglass that brought together 50 to 70 free Black leaders, where one of the issues discussed was the agreement to start their boycott on slave-produced goods. A little subset of that is that although supposedly all Blacks who attended were accepted as members of the convention, the women present were not allowed to participate at first. A compromise was fully reached, which held that the General Convention invitation of persons included women. So I thought that was a good flag because, one, I thought it was really amazing how boycotts link back to 1830 and how they even used like the power of purchase and like the Black economic dollar to stop buying slave-produced goods, which is amazing. And I think people, again, have to really remember that we have that ability to, our money is worth it, especially the Black dollar, and we have to be particular of how we spend it. And I also thought that was interesting because oftentimes it seems like a lot of Black men forget that they still have privilege with the patriarchy, and like a lot of times women still have this fight, and it's like 2 fights, and when you bring it up, it's like they kind of just like dismiss you, or like anytime you say something, it's like you just hate Black men and you're trying to keep the Black men down. And it's like, no, it's just a valid reason that like Black women have it harder in a lot of the cases, and like we need to help them too. Like I think a lot of people forget that like Black women are still also shot by the police and still incarcerated at very high rates, and we're going to be there for Black men, but it also needs to be reciprocated. The second fact is September 21st, 1961, the Southern Regional Council announced that the sit-in movement had affected 20 states and more than 100 cities in southern and border states between February 1960 to September 1961. And at least 70,000 Blacks and whites have participated in the movement, with 3,600 being arrested and at least 141 students and 58 faculty members being expelled by college authorities. So I just thought that was interesting of how effective the sit-in movement was, especially in the South, and how it's important to just kind of keep fighting for what we want to fight for. And that's This Week in Black History.
All right, thank you, Kia and Amari, Black professionals we love.
Okay, so when I was writing this up, I had like an epiphany, and I realized that every episode I highlight public figures who, while they're doing incredible things, I actually don't know them personally and can't actually speak to a lot of the things that I'm talking about. But every episode I get the chance to record with these three lovely professionals who I deeply admire. And so I was like, wow, I'm going to take this episode to celebrate one of our own. So this week, the Black professional I love, and every day actually, is Rachel. For those of you who don't know, she is a data analyst at a government agency. She earned her bachelor's degree from Hofstra University, and her goal has always been to help other women in guidance, in need of guidance when it comes to education, their career path, and mental health. Obviously, this is why Rachel has her own mental health segment on this podcast. When I first met Rachel, I remember we were on someone's rooftop. I don't know where it was, but we were talking about like where we saw ourselves in the future. And I remember Rachel just saying like she wanted to, move out of New York and like work on getting a promotion at work, or just like expand her horizons. And I think it's crazy now because, a few years later, Rachel's now based in Atlanta. And how she got there was by like asking for a transfer and asking for that raise, and being able to witness that transition as a friend was just really amazing. And seeing Rachel take such initiative in her own career made me want to have that same confidence and, know my worth and ask for that. So I really admire Rachel and just everything that she's doing. So I just want to take this time this week to highlight her.
Hey, that was beautiful.
Thank you, Amari. Thank you. So this week's episode, we're going to talk about how COVID has made us reflect on our adulthood. And we've been in quarantine for 6 months now, guys. And I realized that the other day when I was talking to my therapist, and I'm just like, there's some days when I wake up and I don't know what day it is. So the fact that we've been in this pandemic for 6 months, there a lot has happened to us, and a lot has happened also in the world. And for the fact that we're gonna talk about in this episode, I think we have a lot to reveal, and a lot that we've noticed, and the changes that we've made within ourselves as well. So Janae, do you want to talk about the article you found on Vox?
Yeah. So this article is basically saying how COVID has changed us. And I just identified with it because there were just a lot of little things that I think we've all started to do more of or started to do less of. So some of them were slowing down and putting less pressure on ourselves, prioritizing family and friends, which I thought was a really huge one for me personally, because by the end of COVID, it actually got to a point where I was like, I have too many damn friends, because my phone is constantly blowing up, which is a blessing. I know it's a blessing, but it's also kind of annoying sometimes too. Anyway, ethical action and activism. So that's like supporting Black-owned business and protesting, cooking. I mean, how many of us were like, I'm just going to make some bread, while being on lockdown, exercising and then working from home. All of these things, I feel like everyone I know has been experimenting with, looking into, or thinking about since we've been locked down. So, yeah.
Yeah. So we have a few questions that we're going to answer, and we're just going to go down and talk about how COVID has made us reflect on adulthood. So the first question is, what epiphanies we've had while temporarily moving home about our relationships with family or hometown things.
So I'll jump right in. I feel like for this episode, like Rachel mentioned, we just wanted to have some prompts that we could talk about. And one of them, since Amari, Kia, and myself all had the ability, the really privilege to be able to move home. But moving home for all of us, I think, came with its own set of hurdles. Once again, we're all so fortunate to have families that can financially afford to take care of us without it even being a second thought. But, like mom and dad, y'all a lot.
Y'all a lot.
So moving home for me was definitely beautiful at times. I mean, something is simple. When you live in the suburbs, you really kind of take for granted being able to just get in the car, go to the grocery store, get in the car, go run your errands, get in the car, be able to do like X, Y, and Z without having to worry about parking, having to worry about get a ticket, have to worry about, I don't know, this biker on the side of the damn road who's doing crazy stuff in this traffic. Like, you just don't have to worry about that living in the suburbs. So for me, that was just like so nice. Or being able to go for a walk in my neighborhood and not get catcalled, and it just be the beautiful sound of chirping birds and kids running about.
Why does Janae sound like she's like just describing either a scene from Cinderella where she's singing to the birds, or like Snow White?
Bro, that's literally how my soul felt. That's how it be. That's how it be. Yeah. That's how it be. Like, I would literally be outside just like, just happy to be outside with nature and not be bothered by anyone or anything.
Not gonna lie, I became a bird watcher when I went to my parents.
Seriously.
Like, oh my God, do you see that red bird? What do we think it is?
Like, I feel like I had so much time and mental capacity to just be without any distractions, which was so nice. And I also love this time because I was able to spend so much time with my parents and spend time with my brother and sister and like spend time with my niece. It's a small thing, but my niece is like 1 in a few months. And when I first got home, she always be acting sedity and stuff and acting like she don't know nobody. But I really don't think she knew me, which hurt me. And now it's kind of like I jump on FaceTime and she's like, or my brother and his wife came to Long Island last weekend and I visited them and she wasn't acting crazy at all. Like, she knew me. Like, I'm her TT, I'm her auntie now. And before COVID, I was afraid to see her because I was afraid I would hold her and she would freak out because she'd be like, I don't know who you are. But this time it's just been great. And I can also highlight the fact that it's been giving me tests in creating boundaries with my family and specifically with my parents, just as simple as doing the dishes, right? Like, you're the kid growing up. So if your parents ask you to do any type of chore or anything, you do it. But now it's like I come home as an adult where I have an apartment and my own dishes. I'm kind of like low-key, high-key. I'm going to do dishes only when I want to do dishes. That's it. This is your house. You live in it. Yeah. So, but it's like a little thing where you go and I'm like, there are stacked up dishes. I should do them. I'm the child. But then I'm like, y'all going to expect this from me if I regularly do the damn dishes.
Yeah.
So I'm not.
Let you just wash your own dishes?
Not in my household, no.
Yeah, I feel like with parents, I feel the same way about the dishes, Janae, because like the number one thing I had was like the dishes, and it got to the point where like me and my sister would text about it, like I'd be like, bro, they still ain't putting up the dishes. Like, I'm sorry if my parents hear this. But then I just had to like tell my mom, and I was like, yo, it's kind of disrespectful that you guys just assume me and Erica will just do all the dishes. Like, we're not the only ones eating. If anything, we eat the least. So I just think it's rude how every single time it's just expected for me to wake up, put the dishes, take care of the dog, clean everything. And it's like, okay, I can do all that and pay rent at my apartment. I don't mind helping out. I'm not trying to sound spoiled, but it's like, I don't want to do the dishes every goddamn day when I'm not the only one using them.
Exactly. And it's like, I don't mean to sound spoiled at all, but there just need to be these boundaries because I feel like parents are used to y'all's relationship being a certain way. And then you go to college and then you go live on your own and you never have to actually have a discussion of, I'm an adult now with my own things. I am still your child, but I'm not playing the role of your child anymore. And
it's different because it's like, it used to be like, oh, mommy and daddy worked and whatever. But it's like, okay, well, now we're working from home. Now we have other things going on. We have other projects that need to put a lot of time into it. So it's like, I just can't be cleaning everything for fun. Like, it's just not.
Y'all sound like y'all are some parents dealing with some like unruly children. I find this conversation so funny.
It feels like sometimes it does feel like me and my sister are the parents, and then my parents are like the children. It does feel like it's reverse, and I sometimes have to step back and be like, "These aren't my kids. My kids."
I find it. So when I went home, I felt like kind of similar, but like not really in the way that I feel like my parents just underestimate my ability to actually take care of myself and do things. So anytime I did do the dishes or like put them in the dishwasher or made dinner, it was kind of like, oh, Amari, look at what you did today. And I'm like, I can't like it.
I'd actually rather have that though.
I was like, what? And it like, and it was like, it's cute, but then I'm like, but y'all act like I don't do this on a daily basis. Like I'm not capable of doing such simple tasks. And then I was just like, you know what? I'm going to stop being annoyed by it. And I'm just going to lean into it. And then I kind of noticed myself transforming into like my teenage, like childhood self where I'm like, then I like start waiting for my mom to come home and like cook me dinner. And at the end of it, like I loved being home with my parents, but I was like, for my own, like, personal growth and like mental space, I need to leave this space because you're living in your childhood bedroom. Your parents are cooking you dinner, you're watching movies together and it's great, but it's also like I feel like am I 15 again?
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. Like this is the first time my mom has cooked since high school. Like when we were in college, like we would just come home and there would be legit nothing in the fridge. We'd be like, what's for dinner? She's like, I don't know, figure it out. So like now it's weird how she's like, I think she kind of like likes having the kids home for like a good amount of time. So she's like, oh, I'll lean into my mommy responsibilities. And like now she has fun with like cooking and thinking of different ideas to cook, which I appreciate. So I'm just like, okay, I'll just accept it. I'm not going to complain that she's cooking dinner. But then I'm like, okay, Kia, you need to like, and also it's like a healthy thing too, because I'm slowly trying to move into like a more vegan diet. I'm not going to be vegan, guys. I love butter and cheese. That's never going to happen. But I'm trying to just incorporate more vegan dishes into my diet, which I was doing when I was living on my own, because I would cook my lunch make my lunch every week, and it would be very vegan or vegetarian options. And so I just didn't have that at my parents' house because my mom eats a lot of like more red meat and like just meat in general, and my body's like not reacting well to it. And I'm just like, for my own sake, I have to actually like kind of slowly be like aware of what I'm digesting. So I do have to make a more conscious effort of like, okay, Kia, your body doesn't react well to this. Like, even though your mom's making this dinner, you have to like make sure it's kind of like more vegan options too. So that's going to be interesting as well. Cause I'm like, oh, I don't want to cook.
Rachel, you look like you wanted to say something at one point.
I did, but I know this is y'all's segment, not because the prompt, because I'm not, I didn't go back home, but with Amari saying that whenever she would clean or cook, her parents were like impressed. When I was living at home, I don't know if it's a Caribbean thing, but when I was living at home and I would clean or cook, especially cook, my dad would just be like, oh, wow, you cook? Oh, wow, it tastes so good. Like, yeah, like you raised us to like learn how to cook and do certain things. So why are you impressed that I know how to do it? And I'm an adult. So yeah. And then like going back to what you guys said about just, going home and being in your childhood home and dealing with your parents, I don't know if I would have been able to do it because my parents are a lot. They do act like children sometimes. Sometimes when I go over and visit them and I'm telling them to do certain things, I feel like I'm the parent. And they're both very, very stubborn. So I love them. I love them to death, but I appreciate and love my space. So since I didn't move back home, but I do live with my boyfriend, navigating living with my partner, especially during COVID, it has been interesting. There's a lot of ups and downs. And it's just us learning how to communicate better. And we've both started taking on activities that we enjoy together and also like separately. He's getting into like film and photography because that's something that he both wanted to do, my boyfriend. And then for me, I'm, trying to get into being like consistent and writing and, putting more blog posts up because that's what I enjoy doing. And so it's about just doing activities that you guys both enjoy, and because there's going to be time with you're not gonna always want to be on top of each other or like be around each other. So it's also healthy to like have that distance as well as like coming and being together. So let's move on to the next prompt is how, oh no, that's the wrong one. Has COVID shifted our goals, dreams, and priorities?
Ooh, I'll talk a little bit. I don't live with a partner, obviously. I am single, but I do live with roommates. And I think for me, I'm just going to say some things, that there is some type of like awareness of like how selfish people can be, especially with shared space. And I don't know if it's because quarantine is like making people realize certain things or like wanting to be more selfish because they're at home more. But like, I can't deal with the selfishness and like the not cleaning and like not respecting a shared space and having like significant others over or like people over constantly during a pandemic is just like rude to me. And I think after this, I'm just like, I think 100% I need to just live alone. And that's no shade to anyone. Like, it really is like, I can't deal with the, like, I'm about to be 26. And before when I was like 21, I was like, oh, I can't imagine living alone. I'd be so lonely. And I think especially during quarantine, even when I'm at my parents' house, I'm like, oh, I can be in this room legit 48 hours and not talk to anyone and I'll be okay. And that's, again, no shade to my parents. I love you guys. But I'm okay being alone for long periods of time, which before I wasn't. And maybe it's a growth thing, maybe it's an age thing. But I also think I just need my personal space, especially when I'm like doing videos for this or podcasting or something. I just don't want to deal with someone's significant other. I don't want to deal with like cleaning up after someone. And I'm just like, I simply cannot see it any other way that I absolutely will not live with people unless you're engaged to me.
I'm telling you, once you live by yourself, again, this is to be able to have the ability to live by yourself is a great privilege. But if you have that ability to live by yourself, like live by yourself.
Everyone who lives alone tells me that. And I'm like, listen, I'm manifesting, guys.
I'd be walking around my apartment naked. I'm in charge of the air, the heat, the cooling. Like, I don't have anyone to like consider in my personal space. It's awesome. And I actually kind of worry sometimes about like, after graduation, if I move somewhere where I can't afford to live by myself, how I might potentially function in that space, because
I just don't think I can do it. And that's why I'm like, you know what? I'm moving back in with my parents in November, and I'm very grateful I have the opportunity to do that because other things that have happened, and I can do that for 6 months or whatever, how much time I leave. But like, I will not leave that place until I know I can comfortably afford the place I want to live in. And if that means extending that time with my parents, so be it. But I simply refuse to just move in with And even if it's like one of my friends or something, I just don't physically think I can do it.
Yeah, I think if you can afford to, everyone at some point in their life should live by themselves, especially if you see yourself getting married in the future. Like, you're going to have a lot of years to live with someone. And if you have kids in that mix, like, you ain't going to be by yourself at all. So I'm like relishing this time.
Yeah.
I also have been like, I have been manifesting this for a very, very long time. And I'm now getting to the point where I'm kind of like, okay, maybe I'm getting closer. And I think actually going back home really concreted this for me too. Like it made me realize that because with my family, we're all very good at doing our own thing and doing our own shit. And luckily, my home back home is big enough where we can all just be in our own space. And like for me, that was just like, I absolutely love this. And I think something else like that shifted for me was realizing that I need to be able to visit home every few months. Like that really clicked for me because no matter how ridiculous or annoying my family can be at times, it's like they are my people. Like they are like my happy place and my comfort. And like my mom legit is like my best friend. Like legit. Like Paris Price, you the real one.
Hi, Mama Paris.
And it's like it just made me realize that like these are my people. I don't have forever with them. So I would like to be able to, you know, live alone where I have my own space, but also go visit them every 2 months for a few days and then go back.
Yeah, I do
Sounds
miss
beautiful.
that. I do miss that ability because like when I was in New York, I would literally go home once a month. I would just take the bus up home. And now I'm like, if I want to go home, it's a 10-hour drive. Like it really does. Yeah, I think that's important. Like, and also like being able to realize that, you know, that's going to be like a number one priority moving forward is like seeing your family.
Yeah, it has to be. Because I think like a lot of times we move for like jobs and stuff like that, which is fine. But I know for me personally, like there's been a lot of talk of like, Kia, you should move to LA. You should move to LA. And like partially the reason like why we did layoffs is because the development team was in LA. And I'm just like, I'm not going to move across the country for a subpar media job to move away from my parents and my family and my life. Like, it's just not worth it to me. Like, I'd rather just not have the job I want if that means I have to uproot like everyone I like, because at the end of the day, what's important is like the people I like. And I think the one thing that has been consistent, it hasn't been my job. It hasn't been friends. Like, it hasn't been my living space. All of those things have changed in the last like month, but it has been like my family's support. And I do like how where I'm just sad, I'll just like go to my mom and just sit with her, and then I automatically feel better. And it's like, oh, I'm going to cherish that a little more now. And that's also partially why I want to stay in Jersey, because I have a car to like see my parents, and it's just easier. But it's also realizing during COVID that my parents aren't perfect. And I think a lot of times we have this idea where, you know, you're younger and you're like, my mom just does everything right. My dad thinks everything right. And then you talk to them as like an adult and you're like, oh, okay, we disagree on some things. They're not, they don't feel the same way on all the issues that I feel the same way. So that's been something that's pretty interesting too, grappling with COVID, is that just being aware of these things where it's like, oh, you and your parents aren't going to align on every single issue. And like, they also have flaws too. And you just have to like accept that. I don't know if anyone else has felt that way, but I've definitely realized that.
I think when I realized that my parents weren't perfect human beings, that was actually a pretty detrimental moment for me, just because I had a very clear image of like who they were, and like realizing that they're humans and flawed was like really confusing to like grapple with. So I think going back into COVID, like having that already in my mind was pretty helpful, but also like having to constantly remind myself like, okay, yes, they are flawed. They have their issues. Like like you said, like we don't align on anything, and like trying to make sure that doesn't like cloud how I see them, because they're two of my very favorite people in the world. It just sucks having to like deal with the fact that like two people you love a lot, like you don't, like it's not all like rainbows and sunshine all the time. Like you're going to have disagreements, and So yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but yes, I agree with you, Kia.
That's a good point.
No, y'all said it perfectly. It's, you come back home and I saw this before, that me and my parents didn't see eye to eye on things socially. And then you come back home and you have to live home for a certain amount of months and you're like, we're getting in arguments at the dinner table over gender.
I know,
and
right?
stuff like that. And
by the time I left, my dad was like, I don't think you like me, Amari. Like, you may love me, but you don't like me. And I'm like, no, I love and like you.
Exactly.
I just get
You're just
frustrated
old-fashioned as
sometimes.
hell. You're just old-fashioned as hell right now, and you need to chill out and stop being a boomer. That's all.
Wait, Rachel, you were going to say something?
No. Y'all made very good points. If you want to quickly go, talk about what our goals, dreams, and priorities, have they changed due to COVID?
Ooh.
Well, yes. I mean, like, I feel like y'all's things, I feel like a lot of things like career-wise and goal-wise have, like, you guys have had a lot more epiphanies than I have. Or like, I think more things just have happened in career-wise. But for me, I think it's, sorry. For me, I think it's just that, like, and even through like your experiences and like watching you guys, I think it's just like, wow, life is too short to be spending it doing something I don't like. And I think COVID has like really put into glaring view my own mortality. And I'm like, I hope, like, anyone can get infected and like you don't know how you're going to, like, how your body's going to interact with this. And it's just like, how do I want to spend whatever time I have on earth and what do I want to spend it doing? I'm still trying to figure out what I want to spend it doing, but I know I want to make sure that I like my job, especially if it's going to take up so much of my life. And like, that's kind of just like been the epiphany. So I'm like, block out the people who say like your creative works won't like bring you any income. I'm like, okay, well, whatever.
And they're unhappy. So just, yeah, I think that's important. Janae, I'll let you go first, because I feel like mine's like a lot.
Okay, well, I've said it 96 times by now. I lost my job due to COVID. So that was definitely a blessing, I will say. And it made me, I don't know, I wasn't happy there. So like, I lost my job and I was like, okay, was able to get severance and unemployment. And I don't know, just remap and retool and refocus exactly what I want. And it also made me realize that like the way our economy is in the US and the way people are set up to work and live life is not good. And I definitely want to be able to have a job and have work, but it's not going to be my everything. Like, I think it just made me realize that like my job doesn't define who I am. And for so long, because I worked at a big brand company and a big name, I felt so proud of that. Like, that was like, I work at X, Y, and Z. And now it's just kind of like, that doesn't need to be my everything.
That's a good point, because, okay, I also got laid off at that job with Janae. And that time it was a little rough because that was the first time I was a little younger, and it was just a lot to handle. And this time I also got laid off, and I really don't even think it was due to COVID. I think it's just because they wanted to restructure. And I think it's a little evil to restructure during a pandemic when you make billions of dollars. But that's just my opinion. And I think now that that's happened a second time, it just, like, I actually wasn't sad this time. I actually didn't cry at all. I was like, I felt like a relief off my shoulders when it happened. Like, it was weird. And I swear, like, the month after that, it's been the happiest I've ever been. And it's not like I didn't dislike my job. I actually really liked my job, and I worked really hard to get there. But I think it's realizing that I need to take things into my own hands even more, where I've always been that person where, like, I'm not going to work this shitty corporate job, this 9 to 5. And that's why I do put a lot of time into, like, my studies, where I went to school for media and I did all these internships and I did radio, and I always was the one pursuing that. I wasn't just like some boring job. And like, I did work very hard to go into talent and development, which is one of the most creative things you can do in terms of the corporate media sector. So it did hurt that got taken away, because there's not a lot of opportunity, especially in New York, for that. But I think it just solidified my ideas that I'm just not cut out for corporate and corporate's not cut out for me. It's kind of mutual and I'm okay with that. And I haven't been like actively pursuing a job, especially not in the media industry. And before I got to my my last job, I kind of like gave up on my dreams a little bit, where I was like, you know, my goal is to be like a host or, you know, have some type of income for myself. And I think seeing it in the actual like industry, it just kind of like deterred me a little bit because I saw how hard it was to do it. But then with this podcast, like, I'm like, wait, I'm actually am doing what I like. Like, I love the podcast. I put so much work into it. And like, I love putting so much work into it. I love that this is what I spend my time doing. And I want to do that full time. So it's kind of been like a little push for me where it's like, okay, great. Now I'm going to monetize the podcast. And then I think I'm also going to maybe do like a YouTube channel because I'm like, I have time now. So this is what I want to do. And like seeing my best friend Bacola monetize her YouTube channel and like get a job at YouTube from her YouTube channel, it just kind of opened my eyes like, oh, I should really actually like put a lot of energy into myself and I will reap the benefits. And it's very positive to see like people coming to the podcast. And like, I'm not saying I don't know where things will take me. I'm hoping that I could just monetize the side projects, but if I have to, I will do like a tech job just because I feel like media just hasn't appreciated me. And I think like getting laid off twice before 25, I don't think that should be common. And I hope that's not common for a lot of people, but it's just crazy because I look at my resume and I'm like, wow, you would have thought like I would have not been here. So I'm just like, you know what? I'm not going to let corporate politics decide if I have a job or not. I'm just going to decide if I have a job or not, if that makes sense. Sorry, that was a lot. But that's just kind of how I'm feeling.
For me, it has shifted my priorities. I'm now focused on ownership and learning about, you know, owning my own home one day and also doing things that I love aside from my job. Like I enjoyed the work that I do, but now it's like, okay, how can I improve and learn more skills and even elevate and to make more money doing what I'm doing. And that's what COVID has done for me. Like my goals are the same, but it just has brought me to really focus on my goals and my priorities and actually put work towards it. It's good to have a list of what you want to do. We can manifest, but if we're not putting the work towards it, then it's like, why are you putting yourself in this predicament? Why are you saying that you want X, Y, and Z? You want these things, but you're not going after it. So that's, for me, that's what I've been, dealing with and putting that work towards my dreams and also my goals. For Amari, did you go?
Yeah, I did go, but I know these, I think our two prompts kind of melded into one about what we personally lost and but I think for a lot of us, what we've lost has also informed what we want our goals and priorities to be. But one of the things I lost during COVID, during April, was my aunt. And so I lost the ability to then be able to attend her funeral and see her off. And I think there's just been, for me personally, a lot of guilt around her passing, because literally every day during March, I kept on saying, I kept on waking up and being I'm going to call Aunt Fleazy. And I just never called her. And the day that my mom and I went to go call her was the day we got the call that she had passed away. So it was just a lot of guilt around that. And I really credit her with one of my goals growing up was to always be an editor at a magazine. And I was able to be an editor, a social media editor at a magazine. And a lot of that was because she gave me, housing. I lived with her when I first moved to New York, and she took me in, fed me, gave me a whole nice room to myself, and never asked for anything in return. And so, I think I associate New York with her. And so it's really weird. Well, not the whole state of New York, but like very, very specifically Brooklyn, which is a place I love. So it's really hard, I think, to like think about like her house without her in it. And like also like, I don't know how I would feel going in her house without her being in there.
Oh, you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Oh,
It's okay, Amari.
You know, COVID's just like really sucks not having the ability to touch people you love and like think about touching them and like being like, oh shit, like, do I have COVID? Do they have COVID? Like, what's that going to be? And then like not being able to even like physically like say goodbye to people you love. Like I had to like watch her funeral over Zoom, and it's just like a really impersonal experience. So yeah, I mean, I think it's put into perspective, like, wow, like shit, like when someone comes to your mind, like call them, like just like call them. So yeah, sorry guys.
No,
That's okay.
That's hard. Like,
yeah, no.
It's hard. You've known this person your whole life, and you have to like stream their funeral because the protocol is that there can only be so many people at a funeral. There's nothing you can do. But I think like give yourself a little grace with calling her, just because it's like you had no idea, you know, and that was just a chance that she happened to go away at that day. But I don't think she would ever have any like resentment toward you. And when I saw my psychic, she actually brought that up because my aunt also passed away during COVID, and the psychic was kind of talking about how like, oh, you know, your family feels like bad because they didn't reach out to her or something, but she wants you to know that like that's okay. So I don't know if you're into spirituality and psychics, but sometimes it does help to have that, you know, whatever you believe in, to have some type of thing like what they're saying to you. But I think most of the times it's like, you know, there's no resentment there. Like you would have no idea that was happening, and that doesn't take away the fact that you cared about her and loved her, and you know she felt your love, you know, when she was here on Earth. So I just give yourself a little grace with that.
Yeah. I think like she wasn't a very like lovey-dovey person, but I think it's been helpful like knowing people who too were also really close to her, and just like them expressing to me like how much she appreciated our relationship, which like does mean a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot. I guess I'll go next. I don't know. That's a lot.
Sorry to bring the mood, guys.
Okay. I guess I can say that I am blessed so far. I don't think I've lost anyone in my family to COVID. We did lose my uncle's wife.
Oh yeah, she also didn't die of COVID. She died of other respiratory issues.
Oh, okay.
But
Good.
COVID did.
Yeah. We don't know what she died of. I think she had other issues that she died. It just sucks because my uncle was married to her since like, I don't know, it had to be like 50 years or something crazy like that. So that's all he knew and that's all we knew. And it was just crazy to like hear him cry like on the phone. And like my mom felt so bad because that's her brother and the family lives in North Carolina. We couldn't go down there. And we're like, oh, we'll go in the summer. And you know, it's still, you can't go in the summer. So it's like, I don't know when I'm going to see them. And like, you know, luckily he has family down there, but it's tough because it's my mom's brother. She wants to be there for him and she just can't. In terms of other things, like I think when I look about what I want on paper, and I had this idea when I was in my early 20s, what I wanted in 25, and I was like, I want to be in a managerial role. I want to live alone. I want to have a long-term partner. And it's just funny looking back at the now because I'm like, oh, I have none of those things. But it's interesting because it's almost in a way moving back. So it's like, okay, now I don't have the apartment. I don't have a job. And I definitely don't have a partner. But it feels a way where it seems like a clean slate. Like all those things were kind of taken away or like removed from my life. But it seems like I have the ability to have a clean slate and kind of like turn that around. So like, I'm like, okay, now I have the ability to like work on myself, work on my projects, monetize that, get a new job, get a new apartment, hopefully be able to date better people. And it's weird because it's like when I look at it on paper, I'm like, oh fuck, I don't have anything. But when I think about it, I'm like, oh, I actually feel really grounded and content right now because it's like in my own hands. Like I have the ability to like dictate what is in my life for the next 6 months. And I'm hoping that the next 6 months, it's like a lot of growth. And I come out on the side where it's like, oh, I do have a lot of the things I've been achieving for. It's just that I had to like remove myself from all these situations to really work on what I want and pursue it. So that's kind of how I've been feeling. It's weird.
Just really quickly, something that I think I've lost. I already said my job, but on a less tangible level and emotional level, I'll say that like the sense of time, I think for me, for a really, really, really long time, it's been important for me to have a routine. And then I think I've kind of learned to reward myself because I have a routine. Like, you did an entire day of work at your job today and you commuted. So now you deserve to watch a TV show. You deserve to eat something sweet or unhealthy. Like, I think that very much so was how like the honor system in my brain worked. And now not having a job and not having like a tangible list of things to do every day has made me kind of question, well, have I done enough? Do I deserve to chill out? Do I deserve to watch a TV show? So I think I've finally gotten to the point where I'm like, bitch, you deserve because you're a human. Like, you deserve because you're here. So for me, that's been like, it's been something that I've lost a sense of, like having a set list and a set schedule. But I think in that I've kind of gained realizing that I don't necessarily need that and that I can dictate my own shit. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you deserve it.
For me, I feel like I've gained more than I've lost. And I'm grateful to say that I didn't really lose anything during COVID, well, during the last 6 months. But for me, I've just gained an understanding of like who I am and also like what I want in life and the woman that I want to be. And that has been very important for me because I'm still working on myself and things that has happened to me in my past. But I've just gained a little bit more clarity. And now that I have this clarity, then just me pushing myself even more to move forward. Because there are days where I'm just like stuck mentally, just like don't know what to do. I'm just like stuck. But then we do have to give ourselves grace and we have to say, hey, I'm only human. And if you do want to just sit on the couch after work and just, sit and watch TV because your mind has been racing all day and you just need some time to just decompress and just sit alone and be by yourself, Rachel, then just do it, but then it's like, because I was telling my therapist the other day, I'm trying to get myself out of that cycle that I was just so used to since I was a child, because it was school, come home, do homework, go to sleep, wake up. It was like, and it's still today, work, after work, watch TV. So I was like, okay, I need to like get myself out of that cycle and do something different. And that's what I'm like currently working on right now. So that's what I gained during COVID.
I can also like piggyback on the gaining. Like, I have gained so much. And I know that there are so many people who have lost things and like blessings and all the love your way. But I can honestly say from COVID, like, I've been able to move back home, which has made me more financially stable. Like, for the first time in my life, I have 2 savings accounts that are looking sexy. Like, I have never in my life had one savings account that was looking sexy, like never. I've been able to spend tons of quality time with my family, just on like smaller levels. I started doing paint pours, which I felt really good about. I did my own like goddess twist, which I was like, what? She could do her own her. I've made some great breakthroughs in therapy, which I feel like could only happen because I had so much more time to think and digest and ponder life and all those things. I even like gained a booty for a half a second when I was biking a lot back home. So she was like popping and looking thick. And then I stopped working out, but I've started working out again. So yes, we're here, we're doing it, we're working on ourselves. So I feel like I've gained so much.
I really do appreciate the time that I was able to spend with my parents, even though some of it was trying. I realized that, like, wow, this was the first time I've spent this extended period with my parents since college, when I would come home for like summer vacations. Maybe that was only in the beginning of college, because outside of that, I was interning. I've also gotten the chance to like make my apartment in North Carolina pretty homey, which also sucks because I'm like, my ass might not be here in a few months. But I've gotten to like put artwork up on the walls, and it just like makes it feel more personable and nice. And but also, like, while I've realized I really do, I've always been kind of like a homebody. So I think like I'm a homebody and I'm a germaphobe. So I think I've been preparing unknowingly for this moment in time. So I've been doing pretty well mentally. I mean, of course I do sometimes break down after like going through the same space over and over again. But I'm also starting to realize that like I like people more than I thought I did, and that I really do.
Wow, that is the opposite for me. Ooh, I'm like, I actually don't. I'm like questioning if I'm even an extrovert anymore.
You're like, I'm actually pretty okay not seeing you guys ever again.
Like, I think I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not saying like all people. Like, I'm starting to realize that there were some people that I was seeing too much that like now I'm like okay by myself, but I do realize that like I do gain energy. Like, even though I'm an introvert, I do need to see people and like gain that energy from those back and forths. And I like miss it, you know, like the year that, you know, I was so excited when Rachel moved to Atlanta, because I'm like, I can drive down to Rachel all the time. We were like planning these regular weekend trips. And now I'm like, she's here and I can't see her.
Aw, you guys will see each other soon.
We will.
Has COVID made us more mature? Mature.
I think my answer for this was like, I think it's made me more mature in like realizing that I never thought I was invincible, but like realizing that like anything can take you out at any moment. So, Amari, maybe you need to like at one point, guys, I'm not gonna lie, I thought about making myself a will. And then I realized that my mom still has access to my bank account. So it doesn't matter. She'll get whatever money is in there. But no, I think like, you know, like, but also making sure like setting up other accounts so that, you know, I have a beneficiary or something. And I think it's like made me mature in that respect. But I mean, guys, I think I've always been mature for my age. So no, so I don't know if it's changed really over this time.
I agree. I feel like I've always been mature, but COVID has, I do have life insurance. So like, I hear you, Amari, like, you know what I mean? Because there's just certain things that you just have to have lined up, because you just never know. And I think that's what has happened. Life is short. So don't just sit around waiting for things to like happen. You just got to get up and take action and make sure that you're okay.
You know, I'm just going to say, I think every day I try to grow, and hopefully COVID has made me more mature. I think it has, but, you know, maybe some people feel otherwise. I don't know. But I think internally, I've been forced to grow, just because there are situations where it's like, there's no other way. Like, I think if things would have happened for me, what's happening now 2 years ago, I think it would have been really, really hard for me to adapt. But I think just because everything that's happened in actually the last 2 years, like the first time I lost my job, it was actually really rough. And I was like, oh, I'll never have to do this again. And then a year later, it's like, oh shit, it's a pandemic. But it's actually, I've been coping with it better. So it's weird. It's like, it's almost like I've been prepared for this moment to like get through it. And like, I feel positive about it. But yeah, that's just the internal thing for me.
I personally feel like a goddess right now, to be honest. And I piggyback on Nakia because of the whole growth thing. Like, I honestly feel like I'm growing so much. Like, I've been mature my entire life, right? But I just feel like now I've just grown in so many ways, and I'm just constantly, like, I'm working on myself a lot more than I have right now. working on myself mentally, working on myself physically, not being stupid in ways that I've been stupid in the past, and really just being like, Janae, come on, girl. And I'm happy. I'm really happy. There's this one picture that I took, and I mentioned this before, but I got lost in other thoughts. But I've been reading like this webtoon about like gods and goddesses, and then I took this really pretty picture of myself holding flowers, and I'm just like, I feel like Demeter. Like I feel like,
oh my God, I love that. I love Greek mythology, so I'm like,
I love Greek mythology too, but
took a whole class senior year in high school.
Me too.
That shit's awesome.
I took one scene in high school and college. I'm obsessed with it.
It's so cool. It's so cool. And I just feel like a goddess right now. Like I feel like I be growing shit. Like I even got some plants. I have some plants now and they're flourishing. Like I feel like I touch things. I feel like I touch things and they just grow life.
I'm definitely not Demeter because every time I have plants, they die. I'm definitely like an Athena or Artemis, I guess. It's not Demeter.
But I do think not the cool thing, but like one thing that has been cool to collectively watch, at least through social media during this time, has been people's interest in plants and like getting plants and growing things, particularly I think when it comes to Black people. Granted, we were forced into labor in the United States to grow things, but I do think even if you look at the history, like I think that's been a very big thing. So like our ability to grow things. So I think it's been cool to see like, oh, I'm tapping into this like almost ancestral like part of myself, and look at that shit. Look at that scallion. It's thick.
All right, so now we're going to move on to time to talk mental health. On this segment, I wanted to just talk about the work that needs to be done outside of therapy, like put in the work in outside of therapy. It is important that if you are in therapy, and even if you're not in therapy, I feel like some of these tips that I've been doing, I feel like it'll be able to help you as well. But outside of talking to your therapist, it is important that you are also putting in that work. My therapist, she gives me like homework after every session. Not every session. I've been, just to be honest, I haven't been like really doing some of the work that she has told me to do in the past because of like the problems that I had like within myself. I just like couldn't come out and just say, okay, I'm gonna like really dig into this. And I realized that has set me back. And whether it's journaling or reading, getting physical activity, and just really taking time like by yourself after your therapy sessions. It doesn't have to be right away, but just after the time that you have between each therapy session to really focus on the issue that you talked to your therapist about and how you can become better. I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks on YouTube when I feel really, really anxious and I have a lot going on in my mind. I've realized instead of just trying to figure out what it is, what works best for me is sitting down with myself, listening to classical music, reading a book, listening to a book, or even I bought an adult coloring book just to help quiet my mind. And it is so relaxing. I'm telling you, if you never tried it, try it, buy one and see if it works for you. It just helps with quieting my mind and in easing and quieting my anxiety as well. So for you to find something that makes you happy, find something that relaxes you and calms you down. And if you can do it like every day for a week and see how that changes. Because if you're going to therapy and spending money in therapy, but you're not actually doing the work outside of it, you're not going to see growth and you're not going to see change within you. And all of that time is going to be wasted if you're not putting in the time outside of therapy to fix yourself and to grow and to be a better person.
It's so funny you said that because I literally tweeted yesterday. what did I tweet? I actually looking at the tweet. It was about therapy and people not actually putting in the work. Hold on, I'm kind of shady. It said, some of y'all be going to therapy and be moving backwards. Because I feel like there's a couple of people where I'm like, they'll tell me like, yeah, I'm going to therapy, I'm doing all this stuff. And then I'm like looking at the way they act and I'm like, why do you seem worse? Like, what are we telling the therapist?
Yeah, but like Rachel said, it's like putting in the work afterwards. But also like, I think what I've noticed in therapy too is that like I have to remind myself, like, you're in therapy. So when she gives you advice, like one of the things I do struggle with is boundaries with like family members, with like other people. And so she tells me advice on how to set boundaries. And I'm like, I don't want to hurt their feelings, like whatever. So I don't set the boundaries. And then I end up, one of the reasons why I'm in therapy, not listening to it. So like you said, like it's important to do the homework and like put in the work outside of those like small slots of time during the week.
Because we go to therapy to change, so if you're not doing the work, then you're not going to see, like I said before, you're not going to see that growth. But also, before we move on to Janae's segment, I want to announce that this will be my last episode recording with the So-Called Oreos podcast. I want to thank you ladies, Amari, Janae, and Kia, for this amazing experience. Just being able to do my segment has helped me a lot as a person, and also be able to talk about the issues that we face in society. And I think coming out and speaking about the topics in this podcast, I'm like, wow, I didn't even realize that, growing up or thinking that, I thought I was the only one going through these issues. And then seeing our listeners and how supportive they have been. So I just want to say thank you to everyone. This has been an amazing journey. I've learned a lot. And I will continue to support the So-Called Oreos podcast. And I hope you guys continue to support them too. Continue to listen. I'll follow them on social media because they're doing really big things.
Aw, thank you, Rachel.
I still have not internally accepted it. So Rachel is always an Oreo, always an OG. Her mic is always open if and when she ever wants to come back. But thank you for starting this with us. And your segment, Mental Health, has, according to our surveys, like one of the most popular segments. People really love it. I think it's really helping people. So you've done
I will always be an advocate for mental health. So look out for me on social media as well. So yeah.
Oh wait, also I feel like we do this with everyone else. So like also tell people where they can find you outside of So-Called Oreos, because I feel like our followers are trying to like find us and may not necessarily know where they can find us too.
Oh, my handle is rach.fowler. You can find me on Instagram, and I also have a blog, My Sister's Keeper. It's also linked in my bio.
Okay. Follow Rachel, give her love, give her support. She's an Oreo.
And she's just like a bright light. Just a bright light.
A bright light. Tough act to follow, but the shits. We had someone write in this week. I'm so sorry. I actually did not get your name in the screenshot, but how do you deal with being a first gen and not really fitting into either culture? He is Jamaican, and I actually don't.
I believe.
She? My bad. She is Jamaican, and I don't know what this other flag is because I'm an ignorant person.
I think that's the Barbados. That's the flag for Barbados, I think.
Okay. Well, she is a mixture of different island cultures. We'll say that. So although I am not first generation, and my family is from a different part of the diaspora, I can definitely identify. I mean, that's what this entire podcast is about, right? Being an Oreo and not necessarily fitting into either culture you're a part of, being Black and feeling like you're not generally accepted into Black culture, but constantly being surrounded by white people and not being supported or accepted into white culture as well. So how do I deal with it? How did I deal with it? How did we deal with it? I honestly feel like I always surrounded myself with kind of like-minded people. I know earlier in my life and in high school, I gravitated toward a lot of the mixed kids I was around because although I'm not mixed, we went through a lot of the same things. And then later on for me, that was surrounding myself with, in college, people that were working toward the same things as me. And it just so happened that a lot of the people who were working towards the same goals as me had the same background as me. So I would definitely say that that could come in kind of evaluating the people that you are surrounding yourself with now, just friend-wise, and seeing if they are moving toward the same things as you and have similar backgrounds as you. And with family, which is something that's hard because your family will always unknowingly do annoying things like, you know, calling you out for not being as culturally up to date as they feel like you should. Just understand that you are who you are and that person is beautiful, and you're not necessarily beholden to these cultural guidelines and rules that we hold ourselves to. Just be you, and the people who really like you and mess with you will stay around, whether you do things that are culturally acceptable or not.
Yeah.
That's my advice.
Yeah, I think that was good advice. I mean,
thank you.
Yeah, I'm also too a first gen. My parents are both Jamaican. And this is something I've struggled with my entire life. I like to call it like the cultural ambiguity of being a first generation American, because it's like you don't feel American enough. You don't feel, you know, for me, I don't feel Jamaican enough. You know, it's people measuring my Jamaicanness based off of the music I listen to, the food I'm able to cook, how good my fake patois is, which is non-existent because I just sound like an American trying to I don't even sound as good as Tom Hanks' son. Like, it's embarrassing. So that is definitely something I've struggled with. And I think how I come to terms with it is like, overall, again, like what Janae like touched on what this podcast is about is like people judging and creating guidelines for you as a person, which is just like unfair and unreasonable. So I've kind of just learned to ignore, you know, people's comments on whether I'm Jamaican enough or I'm an American enough. Like, I'm enough, you know, I have pride in where my family comes from. I may not be able to cook, you know, I haven't tried oxtail because I find that very intimidating. I may not be able to cook it, but, you know, I still participate in, you know, our culture. And like, I was raised in a Jamaican household by two very Jamaican people. You can't tell me I'm not Jamaican. Like, I really don't care. So, and, you know, like in my adulthood, I think it's just like also gravitating towards other first gen, you know, people. I think like, you know, Janae was the one who introduced me to Rachel, but I think one of the great reasons why Rachel and I were able to hit it off is because like, we know what it's like to be raised by Caribbean parents. And that's a very unique experience. Like, they're no joke.
They're no joke. I'm also first generation. You also have to remember that both of your parents, I don't know if the listener, but both my parents are Haitian, okay? And I'm born in America. So you're also pushed into American culture. So you're pushed to learn the language, to learn the culture. So depending on like your household and how you were raised, you're gonna feel like you don't fit into either cultures because you're like, okay, I have to learn how to speak Creole. I have to understand the music and the language, but then I also have to like go out here in America and try to fit in. So there will be a clash. But like Amari and Janae said, just find people who have common interests as you, and you're enough. Like, don't bother. Don't listen to what other people have to say. And if you want to learn more about both cultures, like go ahead, learn about other cultures as well. Educate yourself. Don't just feel like you have to just stick to like learning about the culture that you were raised in, because it'll broaden your horizon and you'll meet other people.
Mm-hmm. And you touched on a really good point the whole like immigrant story is assimilation. Like America tries to force you to kind of just like, in order to assimilate, there are certain parts, like it forces you to like let go of your culture, like not necessarily be as, like proud of it. I know a lot of, I haven't experienced that, but I know other, kids whose parents grew up speaking another language. Sometimes like growing up, there was like this, like, the language barrier, but also like not the embarrassment, but I don't know how to put it. Like, I don't know. Scratch what I know.
Yeah, but I know what you're saying. It wasn't. I don't want to say embarrassed or but like I can't put the word on it. But I know exactly what you mean about that.
Yeah, and I think it's like unfair for people. Immigrants. They're coming to America for a better life, more access to certain things. And like, I think so because of assimilation, I do think it's unfair to kind of dock first generation Americans for being American when like y'all chose to have us here, like y'all moved here. And then you're kind of like, it feels like almost like a punishment for adapting to the culture in which you were raised. And it's like, if I could be fully Jamaican, born and raised in Jamaica, like, I would, but I didn't have a say over that. So I do think it's like, I do feel like first gens and second gens kind of have it rough sometimes where you're punished for not being what your culture is like fully, but then also like Americans don't necessarily accept you very willingly. So it is a tough thing to kind of straddle.
I'm not first generation, but I will say that it does feel like that thing of like, especially when African people come and they will like be like, well, you're not really like black or like from Africa and you don't know your roots. And it's like, I wouldn't know my roots. Like that's a part of like history. Like we wouldn't know our roots. So I don't think it's fair to like want to come to America and then shit on like Americans and then shit on them for not knowing their culture when we're all just trying to have a better lifestyle for our generation. And I also saw this too with my ex-boyfriend where his family, he was born in Poland, but he came here pretty early, and his parents would almost like, it seemed like they would get mad at him for like adapting to American culture, but it's like, but you brought him here to have a better life. And he's raised like, yes, there's a lot of Polish people, but he's raised in America with American culture. And they would always just like kind of like have this resentment toward him in a way. And I never understood that because I'm like, you guys came here to have a better life. It's not just like, they would only look at like Polish news or something like that. And I'm like, but you have to like kind of adapt and have to accept that he's going to be like more Americanized when he's been here most of his life. So I don't know. It's just been interesting seeing that from like the European aspect too.
And once again, to bring it back to the Oreo experience, I feel like they're just so similar because I look at my life and I'm like, my parents are looking at me dumb crazy because I'm listening to Screamo. And it's like, well, you moved me to the suburbs.
What you expect?
Oh my God. Yeah. Like you moved me with a lot of white people and then you're going to get mad at me for having white friends. It's like, what?
You're going to pick up on a lot of things that's around that's in your surroundings. It's your environment.
It's your environment
now. Yeah.
That's just what it is. That's it. Okay.
This is a good question.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Black Fat Fashion. I'm your host, Ayana Ishmael, and on BFF, we'll be discussing personal and career journeys at a crossroad between being Black, fat, into fashion, or if you're like me, some resemblance of all three. BFF is a podcast focused on having open and candid conversations with Black women and men I and many other people admire in the fashion realm. Every other week, we sit down with amazing industry professionals and chat about their journey in the industry. I hope BFF will serve as an insight for others. Chasing your dreams takes a splash of confidence, and I hope the stories you'll hear on BFF give you the confidence you need. The theory of 6 degrees of separation contends that because we are all linked by chains of acquaintance, you are just 6 introductions away from any other person on the planet. I hope Black Fat Fashion will be your first link that pushes you on your career journey. With love from your BFF.
Thanks so much for tuning into this week's episode. Follow us on all social media at so-called Oreos, and you can email us at socalledoreos@gmail.com. Also, fill out our new survey. It's all on our social media. You can listen to us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play. And please remember to like, rate, subscribe, and leave a review. Until then, bye.